Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we continue our examination of the games of Paul Saladin Leonhardt with a very fine victory of his against the great Akiba Rubinstein, played in Ostend 1906. Let's have a look how this game went. So the opening was very classical. Queen's Gambit declined, something that Rubinstein liked all his life. And the good old-fashioned classical variation where you play the knight to d7 and castle like this. However, c6 was often played in the classical. Also a6 has been played as well. Here Rubinstein played b6. And this has a slight drawback, namely that white can play the move c takes d5. Now in the Queen's Gambit declined, what you really want to do, you want to be able to swap off minor pieces, preferably two sets, a knight and a bishop, because you're a little bit cramped in your position. Swapping off a pair of minor pieces gives you space, and then, well, even though you've got a little bit less space than white, you know, with fewer pieces in your own restricted space, that just goes a lot better. However, just in this move order, this doesn't work at all because we can take and then nab the pawn on c7 in this way. And here the slight drawback there to having the knight on d7. It's why one of the things that made Tartakova come up with this system of playing b6 before playing the knight to d7. Just the ability to take on d5 and swap off a couple of minor pieces if white ever takes on d5. So black has to play e takes d5, and then we're very much into a position of the Queen's Gambit decline that's very well known, very typical, thought to be slightly better for white. I mean, in the good old days when Harry Pillsbury was in there, you know, at some stage it was almost considered to be a forced win for white. Somehow you play the knight to e5, you play f4, and you play the rook over to f3 to h3, and just launch a devastating attack. Nowadays, of course, you know, so many things look even when the engines get onto them. So, you know, the danger is less great. But this isn't the very best Queen's Gambit declined variation for black. Rubinstein played c5, and here Leonhardt played a very reasonable move. Played the move queen e2, just getting the pieces ready, maybe going to play knight e5, maybe just going to play rook d1, maybe going to play bishop a6, just to swap off the light squared bishops and then weaken black's protection of the d5 square. The engines like this move, bishop f5, which is another typical thing, just highlighting that slightly that weakened square you've weakened by playing e takes d5, and putting a bit of irritating pressure with the two bishops against the black position. Also means that it's very natural for black to play the move rook c8 to bring the rook to the c file. The bishop there cutting across that. So, I mean, one typical continuation from my Stockfish Torch games was Queen c2, g6 from black, bishop h3, just keeping the pressure on, and then knight e4. Black trying to exchange off those two minor pieces again, and we get something like takes, bishop d7, rook takes d7, and then d takes c5. And here, you know, black doesn't really want to play b takes c5 because we take on e4 and then we've got this isolated pawn. So black takes with a knight on c5 and we go knight d4. And white's got this typical position with a slight edge with an isolated pawn on d5 to play with. But in principle, black's quite well organized and the engines never see this as any problem. You know, they play the move a5 just to solidify the knight on c5. The bishop can come round to a6. The rook comes to c8. Yeah, I mean, in human games, it does tend to, it can go wrong simply, you know, just because a static weakness, you have to play accurately for long periods of time. It can always go wrong, but for engines, it never goes wrong and they just make draws, 100% of the time from these types of positions. But anyway, this move bishop f5, quite interesting there. The queen e2 played. And now knight e4 from Rubinstein, and this is Stockfish's choice as well, so we can't complain. Again, just trying to swap off some minor pieces and free up black's position. Number of possibilities here. Leonhardt plays something very interesting. Bishop e7 is possible, but bishop f4 played just to try and keep the tension in the position by keeping pieces on the board. And I mean, it's also a little bit irritating. This you can combine with a knight on b5 later, and we've got some irritating little ideas here. So yeah, I find this quite a challenging line for black. Now, there's quite a few possibilities, loads of things that black can play. I mean, knight takes c3 is one possibility simply, and the idea is actually that if you play b takes c3, or even if you play rook takes c3, the engines want to play c4 and then b5 and really start throwing these pawns down. Always got to be very careful with a move like c4, releasing the tension. But if you feel that you can, develop some queenside counterplay quickly, and if white's kingside attack is not that dangerous, then yeah, then I mean it's acceptable to do this. Other ideas. F5 is not an engine choice, but it is quite reasonable. It's a 0.5 advantage for white. Knight df6 is the most common human choice, just solidifying in here, and you give yourself a choice later of taking on c3 and replacing that with another knight on e4, and also playing this c4 and b5 a5 idea. Another idea is to play a6. Just to stop bishop a6 and to stop knight b5, and that's very sensible as well. Very sensible idea. Just stops a couple of those white ideas. What Rubinstein played was a little bit incautious. He played the move rook e8, which is natural. I mean, you always tend to play rook e8 in the end, and especially, the rook facing the queen feels good generally. But Leonhardt reacted with knight b5, a very concrete move here. And, well, you can see the irritating point to bishop f4, the knight coming into c7. And here I think that Rubinstein panicked a bit, or possibly he sort of felt, I've played classically, I've played good moves, you shouldn't be able to get away with this, and just went for some tactics that don't quite work. Hilariously, the best move that the engines want is rook f8, when they basically consider that there's nothing too much wrong with black's position. You just step out of knight c7 and get ready to chase back the knight with a6. So rook f8, rook d1, knight f6, b3, g6. Yeah, you're just solidifying here, and there's nothing wrong at all with black's position. But it takes some courage to play a move like rook f8. a6 was played by Rubinstein, and now d takes c5 was played. Not the best, according to the engines. They just wanted to go straight in with knight c7, and the lines are very, very similar to the game, so we won't look at them too much here. D takes c5, just an attempt by Leonhardt to make it even better, even cleaner. And after b takes c5, that worked quite well. Actually, what the engines want is this horrible looking stuff. So, I mean, it looks completely awful. I can imagine that Rubinstein didn't want to do it. The idea, though, is that black plays b4, gets that pawn onto safety, and you're attacking the pawn on a2. And, well, you've got to be careful as well, because we can also sort of snap the trap shut with knight, one of the knights, or even a bishop to c5, and then this rook on c6 is going to be vulnerable. So yeah, I mean, the engines were playing some quite complicated stuff here, but it was basically working out okay for black here. But very hard to imagine. I just imagine I had a clear advantage here with white. So I can imagine that Rubinstein didn't like this. After b takes c5, we jump in with knight c7, and we're forking both of these. So Rubinstein had prepared the move g5, and yeah, the idea is simply that you might take one of these rooks, but we'll go g takes f4. Your knight can't get back out, and black will win 2 pieces for the rook. And I guess that he was sort of thinking against a weaker player like Leonhardt. Let's just go for it. But Leonhardt did this pretty well, really. He played the move knight takes g5. Now, that's not the engine top move, but it is also very, very strong indeed. The engines wanted to play bishop takes e4. And And yeah, if d takes c4, it's very similar to the game. I think we're just taking on g5 here. It's even better. And if you go g takes f4, we go knight takes d5. And yeah, the engines seem to feel that this was even stronger than Leonhardt's continuation. Not 100% sure about that, to be honest. I mean, Leonhardt's continuation looked really, really good, I have to say. But, you know, this is also obviously, very strong indeed. The black king side is very weak, and we're also a pawn up, and we've got, threats of knight takes c7 and bishop b7. So obviously very good indeed. But knight takes g5 is quite fun, and well, just shows how yeah, I suppose you'd say how poor Rubinstein's judgment was there, because obviously 2 moves that are good is a little bit too much, really. So bishop takes g5 was played, and now knight takes c8. And yeah, this is a little bit awkward now, to say the least. Bishop takes f4 was played. And now, yeah, again, there's a nice choice, but queen g4 check was Leonhardt's continuation here. And yeah, I mean, we're lining up an awful lot on different stuff here, and yeah, black's got to be just really careful where he puts stuff. I mean, king h8 allows queen g7 checkmate, for example. So yeah, king f8 was possible, and then we play e takes f4, king takes e8, takes, and rook d1. And yeah, this is just very, very unpleasant. We can line up on the d file with the rooks. We can just start taking some pawns as well. It's a clear advantage for white. I mean, black isn't lost yet, but the engines were winning all of the games that were being played there. So what Rubinstein did was play bishop g5, hoping, obviously you can get attacked by stuff, but you're hoping that you can drive the queen away somehow and then have time to pick this one up. I mean, you've got 2 pieces for the rook already, so it's not. Yeah, you're hoping that you'll be able to pick up the knight as well, and maybe only lose 1 piece back. But bishop takes e4 played, d takes e4. And now rook d1, and now this is kind of the problem, really. Just by exchanging off pieces, white's actually managing to prise open the black position here. And well, we've got this one which we can attack with h4, and we've got rook takes d7 or queen takes d7 coming in as well when this one's attacked. So what did Rubinstein do? Well, Rubinstein played the move h5, just desperately trying to distract the queen from this pin here. Other ideas: knight e5, rook takes, knight g4. We can just take and go rook c5, and this was stockfish against torch. This was just trivial, basically. You're just going to you're attacking this bishop. You go rook c8, rook here, knight f6 check, and pick up the knight on g4 even. So yeah, really quite horrible. So h5 was played, and now queen takes d7. Nothing too complicated. We're attacking the bishop on b7, so yeah, just queen e8, queen b7 wins an awful lot. In takes and bishop c6, this was yeah, kind of Rubinstein's final throw of the dice, really. But we just go knight c7 in this position. I mean, actually, you could even just go rook takes c5. That's what Torch did against Stockfish, and then rook takes g5, and then get the knight out to f6, and you're doing absolutely great as well. A couple of pawns up in an ending. But knight c7 was played by Leonhardt, rook c8, and now rook d6. And the basic idea again is rook takes c5, rook takes c7 rather. We go rook takes c5, and we're attacking this one, and this one's also pinned. And bishop e7, well, we just take here, takes, and rook c1, covering the back rank mate, and it's all absolutely finished. So after rook d6, bishop b7 was played, but knight takes a6, bishop e7, and rook d7, forking the 2 there. Completely great for white there. So bishop a6 was played, rook e7, bishop d3, rook e5, and well, Leonhardt wasn't a great technician really for converting stuff, but he wasn't going to mess that up. He just took both h pawns. Rubinstein tried to shimmy a little bit to get at the b pawns, Yeah, I would have said that, to be honest, that I would have just played b3 just to do that. But he played a3 and then checked and then went h4 and a4 and just advanced both rook pawns, which turned out very, very well indeed. And Rubinstein resigned because you can't stop the pawn from going to the 8th rank. So a pretty good game there from Leonhardt, and I mean, Rubinstein was really, really strong. So this was a very impressive game, really. Yeah, interesting opening. And again, interesting, always that interesting battle in the Queen's Gambit declined about black trying to exchange some pieces to free himself, and white, yeah, often just trying to keep pieces on the board. And this bishop f4 was a good idea. And well, rook e8, knight b5 was a graphic illustration of why you want to do that. But yeah, very interesting that the engines point out rook f8 and you're absolutely fine. Quite hilarious, really. But yeah, after that, the tactics were all in white's favour simply. And yeah, Leonhardt navigated them very, very well indeed. And yeah, Rubinstein, yeah, really, you saw there were, basically a couple of good alternatives for white at every single place there. So yeah, not a good judgment by Rubinstein to enter into these complications. But a very nice game by Leonhardt nonetheless. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that game with some nice little tactics and nice little things to look at. If you enjoyed it, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, have a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics, written together with Steve Giddens. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.